In the heart of a desolate town, where the sun seemed to shy away from shining too brightly, stood the infected house, a decaying structure shrouded in mystery and dread. Its windows, once clear, were now murky with grime, and the woodwork was distorted with rot. Legends spoke of a family who vanished within its walls one stormy night, leaving behind only whispers of their cries. Lately, locals had reported strange occurrences, flickering lights, disembodied voices, and the occasional figure glimpsed behind the grimy windows. One chilling evening, a group of brave souls driven by curiosity and the lure of urban legend decided to enter the house, armed with nothing but flashlights and skepticism. As they crossed the threshold, the temperature plummeted, their breaths forming visible puffs in the frigid air. The once familiar rooms felt alien, twisted by an unseen malevolence. Shadows danced mockingly at the edges of their vision, and an oppressive silence hung like a shroud. They ventured deeper, each step echoing ominously in the empty halls. Strange symbols, smeared in what looked like old blood, adorned the walls, and a pervasive, foul odor seemed to seep from the very walls themselves. The group's leader, determined to unravel the mystery, stumbled upon an old diary hidden in a dusty drawer. Its pages detailed the family's growing paranoia and a horrifying revelation of a malevolent force that had taken hold of their home. As they read aloud, the air grew heavier, and a guttural growl reverberated through the house, shaking the walls. Desperation set in as the group tried to flee, but the house seemed to have a life of its own, its layout shifting as if mocking their attempts to escape. One by one, they were swallowed by the darkness, their screams echoing through the cursed halls. By dawn, the infected house was eerily silent once more, its malevolent presence lingering as a grim reminder of the horrors that lay within. The infected house had long stood as a grim testament to the town's forgotten past, its once grand facade now weathered and sagging under the weight of time. Legends whispered through the streets spoke of a family who had disappeared one fateful evening, their absence leaving an indelible mark on the community. Intrigued by the dark allure of these tales, a group of friends, each eager to uncover the truth, decided to venture inside, driven by a blend of skepticism and thrill. As they entered, a heavy silence enveloped them, punctuated only by the distant scuttling of unseen creatures. The air was thick with a musty odor, and each step seemed to echo unnervingly in the dimly lit hallways. Their exploration began in what appeared to be a drawing room, its furniture cloaked in white sheets, giving the room an air of abandoned tranquility. However, the deeper they ventured, the more the atmosphere grew oppressive. Strange symbols etched into the walls, and the cold, unsettling drafts hinted at something far more sinister than mere decay. They stumbled upon a series of rooms, each more bizarre and disorienting than the last, with furniture arranged in unsettling patterns and photographs showing eyes that seemed to follow their every move. A palpable sense of dread settled over them as they uncovered a hidden compartment behind a bookcase. Inside, they found a series of journals, their pages filled with frantic scrawls and disturbing illustrations that described the family's descent into paranoia and despair. The journals spoke of a presence that grew stronger each night, feeding off their fear and isolating them from the outside world. As they read, a chill crept into the room, and the once flickering lights dimmed to near darkness. The temperature plummeted, and the whispers of the past seemed to rise around them, forming a chorus of anxious murmurs. Panic set in as they realized that the house was not only alive, but also actively manipulating their sense of reality. The once familiar rooms began to shift, creating an endless maze of hallways and staircases that twisted and turned in impossible ways. The group tried to retrace their steps, but each turn led them deeper into the house's labyrinthine grip. The atmosphere grew denser with fear, the walls seeming to close in, and the shadows lengthening, as if reaching out to ensnare them. Desperation took hold, and they clung to the hope that the answers lay in the final journal entries, which hinted at a ritual meant to appease the malevolent force. With trembling hands, they gathered the necessary items and performed the ritual, their voices trembling as they recited the ancient words. A profound stillness fell over the house as they completed the ritual, the oppressive weight lifting slightly. They navigated their way through the now eerily quiet hallways, finding the main entrance at last. As they stumbled out into the cool night air, they looked back at the infected house. It stood silent and unchanged, as if nothing had occurred within its walls. Exhausted and shaken, they could not shake the feeling that something had followed them out, an intangible presence that lingered just beyond the edge of their perception. The house remained a dark enigma, its secrets forever etched into the minds of those who dared to enter. The group, now safely outside, gathered on the overgrown lawn, their breaths visible in the chilly night air. The moon cast long shadows across the yard, highlighting the house's eerie silhouette against the dark sky. Each member of the group was lost in their own thoughts, processing the terrifying events they had just endured. The once inviting allure of the infected house had transformed into a symbol of their deepest fears. As they watched, the house seemed to exhale a final, ghostly sigh, and the oppressive atmosphere that had clung to them began to lift. The windows, now dark and empty, seemed to stare back at them with a malevolent, indifferent gaze, as if the house itself was mocking their narrow escape. They were haunted by the knowledge that, though they had escaped, the house's malignant presence had not been entirely vanquished. The cryptic symbols and the unsettling rituals from the journals had only served to delay the inevitable, not to erase the malevolence that had been festering within those walls. Their once fascinating investigation had become a nightmarish ordeal, leaving them with an unshakable feeling of being watched. In their minds, the house's sinister whispers and shadows would forever linger, a constant reminder of their brush with the unknown. They resolved to share their story with others, hoping to warn them of the house's dark influence. Yet, deep down, they knew that some secrets were meant to remain buried, and some places were best left undisturbed. As dawn began to break, the first light of morning began to touch the edges of the infected house. It appeared almost serene in the daylight, a deceptive calm that belied the terror that lay within. The group left the town, their journey away from the house marked by a heavy silence. The memory of their night within the house would remain with them, an indelible scar on their lives. The infected house stood as a silent witness to their ordeal, its dark secrets safely hidden from the world outside, awaiting the next soul brave or foolish enough to uncover them. As the group departed, their minds were awash with fragmented memories of their ordeal, each moment replaying with haunting clarity. The morning sun, though promising warmth and safety, did little to alleviate the lingering chill that clung to their bones. The town they left behind seemed almost to exhale a collective sigh of relief as they drove away, but for the explorers the sense of escape was bittersweet. Each mile put between them, and the infected house seemed to amplify the weight of what they had experienced, as if the very distance could not fully erase the psychological scars. Back at their homes, attempts to return to normalcy were fraught with difficulty. Sleep eluded them, as nightmares of shifting rooms and disembodied whispers haunted their dreams. Everyday routines felt hollow, as though the house had siphoned away more than just their peace of mind. Their conversations, once lively and full of camaraderie, were now punctuated by an uneasy silence, each member grappling with the shared but unspoken trauma. The house, meanwhile, stood silent and unmoved, an enigmatic presence in the town's landscape. It seemed to watch the world through its grimy windows, waiting for the next opportunity to ensnare unsuspecting souls. The locals continued to whisper about its dark history, their tales now gaining an almost mythic quality. The infected house became a symbol of the unknown, a place that defied understanding and rationality. Those who had dared to enter were now part of its dark legend, their own stories intertwining with the house's ominous reputation. Time passed, but the impact of their experience remained. Each member of the group found themselves drawn back to the house, whether in their thoughts or in whispered conversations with each other. They knew that their encounter with the infected house had changed them irrevocably, leaving an imprint that no amount of distance could fully erase. The house continued to loom in their memories, a reminder of the fragile boundary between the known and the unknown, and the perilous curiosity that led them to confront it. As they went on with their lives, the shadow of the infected house remained a constant, eerie presence, a dark chapter forever etched into their personal histories. Months passed since their harrowing encounter, yet the infected house seemed to linger in their collective consciousness like a persistent shadow. Each of the explorers attempted to rebuild their lives, but the events of that night had left a deep and unsettling imprint. They found themselves drawn to their shared experiences in ways they hadn't anticipated, revisiting old conversations, analyzing every detail, and piecing together what they had uncovered. It was as though they were searching for answers, or perhaps for some semblance of closure that remained elusive. Lucas, once a skeptical leader, now found himself increasingly withdrawn, plagued by an insidious sense of paranoia. The house's oppressive atmosphere seemed to follow him, manifesting as unexplained noises and flickering lights in his own home. He became obsessed with researching the history of the infected house, combing through old records and local legends in a desperate attempt to understand what they had truly encountered. His obsession led him to a local historian who revealed that the house had been the site of numerous inexplicable occurrences over the decades, suggesting a pattern of terror that spanned generations. Jessica, who had been the most visibly frightened during their ordeal, struggled with frequent, vivid flashbacks. Her nightmares were relentless, filled with twisted corridors and suffocating darkness. She began to distance herself from her friends, retreating into isolation as she tried to make sense of her fear. Her mental health deteriorated, and she sought professional help, hoping that therapy might ease the burden of her trauma. Despite her efforts, the nightmares persisted, leaving her feeling as though she was forever trapped in the house's malevolent grip. Tom, the group's once light-hearted member, became preoccupied with documenting their experiences. He took to writing a book about their encounter, driven by a compulsion to share their story with the world. His writing process was fraught with difficulty as he struggled to convey the true terror they had faced without falling into sensationalism. The act of writing itself became a cathartic exercise, helping him process his own feelings, but it also served as a constant reminder of the horrors they had witnessed. Maria, the most analytical of the group, dedicated herself to studying the occult and supernatural phenomena, hoping to find rational explanations for the events they had experienced. Her investigation led her to various experts in paranormal studies, but their theories often conflicted with her own observations. The more she learned, the more she realized that the infected house was unlike anything she had encountered before. Her research, while intellectually satisfying, did little to quell the underlying sense of dread that had taken root in her psyche. As they moved through their lives, each member found themselves forever changed by the infected house. Their personal struggles were compounded by a shared sense of unresolved terror. They remained bound by their experience, their once strong friendship now tested by the weight of their ordeal. Though they attempted to continue their lives as best as they could, the shadows of the infected house cast a long and enduring pall over their existence. The house itself continued to stand. A silent testament to the darkness it had once harbored, it remained unremarkable in its outward appearance, but those who knew its history understood that it was a place where the boundary between the ordinary and the extraordinary had been irrevocably blurred. The infected house awaited its next visitors, its secrets locked away behind decaying walls, ready to ensnare those who dared to venture within its grasp.